Today on The Report, we discuss upcoming closures of CVS, Rite Aid, and Walgreens stores, plus an attack on a security guard at Fullerton College.
The murder of a Palestinian-American boy in Chicago, plus the gag order issued for Donald Trump. The Report starts now. Hello, I'm Noah Sakadas.
And I'm Jasmine Alvarez. Don't forget to follow us on our Titan TV Instagram at Titan TV CSUF to keep in touch with us and view our latest content. Rite Aid has joined the list of stores facing major closures this year as the pharmaceutical company declared bankruptcy on Sunday. Rite Aid currently holds an outstanding $3.3 billion in debt, and with the bankruptcy, 450 to 500 stores are expected to close. The news comes at a time when pharmacists and healthcare workers are on strike to combat better work environments and better wages. Most notably, more than 75,000 Kaiser Permanente workers walked out on October 4th to protest staffing issues and wages. 5 days later, Walgreens workers across the country also walked out to protest working conditions. Rite Aid is not the only pharmaceutical company that will close their stores, as Walgreens and CVS will follow suit. Walgreens will close 450 locations worldwide, 300 in the United Kingdom and 150 in the United States.
Friday, October the 13th was a scary day for Fullerton Junior College security officers. At about 6 o'clock that morning, a 53-year-old safety officer was patrolling the campus and noticed 3 teenage boys trespassing. When the guard approached them, a violent altercation ensued. According to the City of Fullerton Police Department, 18-year-olds Elijah Balfe and Austin Valdivinos, as well as an unnamed 17-year-old, quote, punched, kicked, head stomped, and eye gouged, end quote, the guard. The guard managed to use his radio to call for help, and other campus security officers soon arrived to assist. The campus officers were able to detain Balfe, but the other 2 teens ran to a different side of the school. The 17-year-old allegedly reapproached the scene and began to swing a, quote, tomahawk-style axe, end quote, at one of the security guards, before fleeing the scene with Valdivinos. Eventually, the minor was apprehended at a cross street near the scene of the crime, and Valdivinos at a residency on North Berkeley Avenue. The guard was immediately transported to a local hospital and received treatment for his injuries. Sergeant O'Neill of the Fullerton Police Department advised that the incident was an unprovoked attack, and that none of the teenagers involved were students of the college. It has not been confirmed if the students attend any local Fullerton high school. Sergeant O'Neill also advised that all 3 boys have been charged with assault with a deadly weapon. Balfe and Valdivinos were taken to the Orange County Jail, and the 17-year-old was taken to juvenile hall.
A Chicago landlord is in custody for the murder of 6-year-old Wadia Al-Fayoum and for the attempted murder of the child's mother. Just 8 days after Wadia Al-Fayoum turned 6, he and his mother were stabbed in their home by the family's 71-year-old landlord, Joseph Zuba. The young boy was stabbed 26 times, and his mother endured more than a dozen wounds. The suspect is being held without bond for charges of hate crimes, aggravated battery, and murder. Wadia was described as, quote, a warm, kind child who focused on enjoying life with his friends and playing outside, and who loved his parents and family deeply, end quote. The child's parents are from West Bank Village and moved to the United States, where Wadia was born in 2017. Hanan Shaheen, Wadia's mother, is recovering in the hospital and could not attend her son's funeral services. The Will County Sheriff's Office said that, quote, both victims in this brutal attack were targeted by the suspect due to them being Muslim and the ongoing Middle Eastern conflict involving Hamas and the Israelis, end quote. A federal hate crime investigation has been opened by the U.S. Department of Justice. Additionally, President Joe Biden took the time to address the family's tragedy and said, quote, this horrific act of hate has no place in America, end quote. Wadia's father, Odeh Al-Fayoum, demands accountability and is hopeful that something positive will come from this tragedy. Chicago Mayor Brandon Johnson released a statement denouncing the attack, which he called a, quote, shameful reminder of the destructive role Islamophobia plays in our society, end quote.
In Washington, D.C., Judge Tanya Chutkin, who is presiding over former President Donald Trump's attempt to subvert the 2020 election, has issued a gag order for his continued attacks on the court, possible witnesses, and prosecutors. The court-appointed gag order prevents Trump from making inflammatory statements against members of the court. Through this order, Judge Tanya Chutkan has placed the biggest limit on the ex-president's speech that he has ever been issued. Chutkan claimed, quote, "This is not about whether I like the language Mr. Trump uses. This is about the language that presents a danger to the administration of justice," end quote. The judge cited several examples of Trump's inappropriate language use in court, such as the time he referred to counsel Jack Smith as a, quote, "thug," end quote, and the time he said a potential witness committed a, quote, "treasonous act that in times gone by, the punishment would have been death," end quote. Aware of Trump's current campaign for the 2024 presidential election, Judge Chutkan stated that his candidacy, quote, "does not give him carte blanche to vilify public servants who are simply doing their jobs," end quote. She defended her actions against would-be critics who say that her order impedes upon Trump's First Amendment rights by stating, quote, "That is false. The First Amendment yields to the administration of justices," end quote. Although Judge Chutkan did not address what penalties Trump will face if he violates his gag order, she listed multiple options such as admonishing him in court, imposing monetary fines, home detention, and or revoking his pretrial freedom. It's believed that she might issue a, quote, "show cause order," end quote, that would make Trump justify his actions for breaching the gag order rules. Upon arguing against the order, Trump's attorney John Lauro claimed that his client is, quote, "being punished by the Biden administration during an election cycle," end quote, and pointed that the March 2024 trial date is a day ahead of the Super Tuesday primary. Chutkan said to Lauro that, quote, "This trial will not yield to the election cycle and we will not revisit the trial date," end quote. Well, many people are, frequent shoppers at CVS, Rite Aid, and Walgreens. How might these closures affect the people, What other alternatives might there be?
That's a great question. I think it's definitely going to affect the regular customers and people who have routines, definitely those prescriptions that they have to routinely get prescribed and take. I think mostly the population that's going to very likely be affected and the ones that rely on those routine medications would be the elderly population, which I think is really sad. Most of them don't, they don't drive anymore. They rely on having to walk to locations. So with closures, it does make me wonder, are they going to be is there going to be less access to care for those populations, for the population in general, but truly for those who can't access them maybe as readily as you and I. And not only that, but you brought up what other alternatives are there. And I was doing some research to see what kind of options maybe the community members might have for those stores that do shut down. And they do offer delivery options. However, there is a catch. Certain stores, don't offer delivery services for free. Only a few do. And not all insurances cover the cost of delivery services. So it can get expensive depending on the number of medications that someone might be taking. So that's something to consider as well. And delivery options might not always be available for all types of medications. Some medications, require to be refrigerated. So it is concerning. I think there's definitely, it's going to be a little bit tough for those people who do rely getting their medications from CVS, Walgreens, Rite Aid. But there definitely are options out there. You just have to see what works best for you. What are your thoughts?
Well, in my opinion, I see a gradual transition from public stores, pharmaceutical stores, to more online businesses. And with that gradual change into like a virtual business, I think we're going to see some cuts in the traveling fees and the shipping fees because that's just going to be the new norm. And you can't have a business that's run like that where people are going to be constantly complaining to you and looking for other alternatives if you can't even get them in the physical store. I think that's going to be a big issue in the future. Do you personally shop at any of these places? I
have in the past, not recently, not anymore, but I have in the past. And, I have to say you brought up that it's a little bit more efficient to have online catering to you versus having to go in physical stores. Right. And when I used to shop at my local CVS, Rite Aid, Walgreens, some of the things I would notice when I would go to pick up my pharmacy medications, the lines would be super long. The wait times would be very long. So, I do wonder if having everything automated and online, it might just, reduce that time, and it might help with the staffing, less staff having to cater to so many customers in person. But I do wonder, again, with the elderly being majority of the population that's probably going to be affected, they don't really always know how to access electronics the way that maybe the newer generations do. So, what's going to happen to them? Are they going to have to make other options still available for them? I mean, it is tricky. Let's go ahead and move on to our next story on the Fullerton College attack. That was so shocking, first of all, to hear it was incredibly saddening, disheartening to see youngsters, causing something that's just so tragic, genuinely sorry.
Ruining their lives too at such a young age.
True, exactly. Yes, exactly. So this happened so close to our campus and campuses that are close to the city of Fullerton, like Troy High School. What do you think do you think we should be on edge? Do you think we should feel some anxiety about this?
Well, I don't think there's any reason for genuine alarm. I think this was an isolated incident amongst violent kids. However, that doesn't mean that us as CSUF students should be completely unaware of our surroundings. We should always be careful. I recommend carrying a pepper spray in your bag if you're ever going out at night to a friend's house nearby. Fullerton is generally a safe area, I'd say, around campus, but there's still going to be that violent aspect in every community. So I advise that all of our students and everyone in general just be generally aware of their surroundings, I think. But there's no cause for genuine alarm, I feel. What about you?
That's a great observation. I feel, it's kind of scary. For me personally, you have been seeing such a rise in crime and really brutal crimes as well, with physical assaults. And they had, and these are teenagers, right? Mind you, they were 18, but they're still relatively young teenagers. Or, one of them was still a minor, 17-year-old. And they were carrying weapons in a tomahawk style. That's if you've seen ridiculous. The images, these weapons look incredibly dangerous. They would definitely murder somebody. So it is scary. Like you said, it's very essential that we are aware of our surroundings, that we're mindful of where emergency services may be, whether you're on campus and there are some emergency light services where you can hit them and, a police officer will get to you within a matter of minutes. Those things are all important. Report. If you see something, say something. That's something that, oftentimes we also don't say, but it is scary. The officer went to go let those, the teenagers know, hey, you're trespassing, doing his job. And unfortunately, he was assaulted.
Unfortunately, I think they were going out to find violence. It seems like that was the case.
Yeah.
I think they were going out to look for an incident.
Yeah, that's true. What do you think would drive them to want to do something so violent?
It could be any number of reasons. I mean, psychological, bad home situation, a bad role model that they picked up on. It could be any number of things. And the best thing we can do personally is be prepared and watch out for people that look suspicious, that you don't trust, that could potentially cause you harm. And keep away from them.
Right. Yeah, no, I agree. Definitely. And what about, do you think that they should be, facing punishment or tried as adults?
Personally, the actual punishment they should receive, I don't think that's my place personally, but I do believe that there should be an excessive punishment because, the man's eye was gouged out. No one deserves that kind of cruelty.
Right.
And it's just tragedy all around. They're so young too. One of them is a 17-year-old. His life isn't even begun yet.
Right.
He probably not even left high school. And now he's facing criminal charges where he could potentially be tried as an adult. That's a horrible thing.
Yeah, exactly. And I do definitely believe in rehabilitation, but these are definitely scary warning signs. If it escalates, they could definitely lead to murder. So I do definitely believe that a punishment should be in place. Like you said, it's probably not our place to say what that punishment should be, but there should be a punishment to make sure that actions like these aren't repeated and others are aware that there are consequences for this. I definitely think that there should be some psychological evaluations taken place, making sure that they are getting the best care so that way they can be rehabilitated and hopefully one day reenter society without causing problems and actually being, bringing something good to the community,
Okay.
Moving on to our next story of the murder of the Palestinian-American child in Chicago.
Awful. Thing.
Man, just in general, what were your thoughts on that story?
It's just a horrible thing.
Yeah.
Hate crimes, no matter what race, what community, is just an evil act, and we need to raise awareness for that. It's just a horrible thing all around. There's no words. There's really no words, and it's a 6-year-old boy too. That's awful.
Right.
It's horrible.
Yeah, and they had actually mentioned that his birthday had not passed that long ago, so it's just devastating in general. I think it's just so sad. How can we be a little bit more mindful about Islamophobia? What do you think?
Well, I think we need to understand it and recognize it when it's happening and its behavior, and just teach our kids in the future that to not treat anybody differently. If you have a stereotype, don't act out and treat everybody equally. It's just common sense. There's no need for Islamophobia or bigotry in our society, especially in 2023.
I agree. I definitely agree. And not only that, I think it's also tolerance. If someone has a differing opinion from you, it's okay. We can learn to tolerate that, accept that, and learn to navigate our emotions as, not everyone's going to agree with our viewpoints, and that's the beauty of this world. Everyone's going to have different opinions, different insights, and, it's when it becomes personalized and, you take matters into your own hands and truly you become hateful with your speech or with your actions. And, this was just so tragic, devastating. So moving on with the next question, though 9/11 was a little bit out of our generation's time frame, maybe some of us were born, but we probably don't remember much of that, of what happened during that time. Do you see any parallels of how Muslims were treated following 9/11 and how they're being treated in recent times with the war in Israel?
I don't see a too close a connection here with the mistreatment of the Muslims in the United States. In fact, I think we found ourselves kind of one of multiple, if not the one of the only incidents against a Muslim boy right now in the United States. I see, honestly, across the board in cities and in universities, rapid anti-Semitism across the United States at the moment. We've seen, especially in the Free Palestinian movement, there was speeches in New York and London just a week ago where there were Palestinians calling for the deaths of all Jews. I think that's also a statement that's an issue that needs to be discussed as well. I think there's violence and there's hatred and there's bigotry on both sides. And I think, honestly, as Americans, I think we need to come together and just denounce hatred of both sides. I think we need to find as quick an end to the violence over there as possible. We need to go contact our legislators, contact our senators and our congressmen, and just plead for an end to the violence, because this just cannot go on. We're just breaking ourselves apart even more.
Yeah, I agree. And I think it's really tragic. It's devastating. We have to find a way to come to a compromise, if in the most peaceful way that we can. And like you said, hate has to stop from both sides. It has to end. Right. And we have to choose peace. And I definitely, I agree with that.
Well, then let's move on to the President Trump story. Geez, well, why do you think American residents still care about the happenings with former President Donald Trump?
Well, I think that's a great question. It's relevant. He's still definitely planning on, he is running for the 2024 election. So it's relevant if he's one of our potential candidates again, and he's our current president. Sorry, not our former president, pardon me. Yes. Former president. It does matter, especially if he might be our new president again. So, I can't fault everyone wanting to pay so much attention to it. And I think it's good. I think everyone should research our candidates thoroughly, come to your own conclusions, whether you want to form your personal opinions or keep them separate from the politics. That's up to your own discretion. But I think it is still good to research, see what's being done, and really stay up to date with the current presidency.
Do you think with the administration or with the institution of this gag order on the president, do you think this is an infringement on his First Amendment rights?
I don't actually. And I actually have to side with what the judge had to say about it. You know, she's not infringing on his rights per se, but and the rights don't have I'm sorry, your First Amendment right is protected. However, the court of law, the justice, is the final say. So at the end of the day, I do side with what the judge put. I think she's just trying to protect the court of law, which is important. I think we need Americans to see that the court of law has to be respected, that it is something that no matter who you are, you will abide by it and you will respect it. So I think that's really important. What are your thoughts? I'm curious.
I just think it's interesting, obviously, and you know, it's important. It's been a long time coming that they're finally cracking down on him.
Right.
The one thing that is suspicious is that they're issuing this gag order and they're scheduling it right before the primary. That was definitely to try to prevent him from garnering more votes and popularity. I think this this whole arrest of Donald Trump and the photograph taken, I think it had the exact opposite effect that the Democrats were hoping for, and the FBI as well. They were hoping to vilify him and show that we finally gotten the monster, but instead I think it's rallied Republicans together to kind of see Trump as this figure, this mantle to rally behind, you know, because it's, the U.S. government locked our president up.
Right,
so it's not looking good, unfortunately. And I don't think that this scheduling of Trump before the primary is going to do them any help either.
Right. Yeah. It seems to be fortifying his party's thought, right? Like they're like, you know, this is even more proof that everyone's against him. You know, so but it does make me wonder, do you really believe that possibly Judge Chutkan would be behind that, would encourage trying to sway or vilify President Trump? I mean, it does make me put that into question because she is so adamant about protecting the justice system. You know, I feel like she would also be adamant in just upholding the law in general and, you know, making sure that everyone has a fair and a good right to run for presidency.
Right. I totally agree. Do you personally think, though, that Trump will finally end up in jail because of this?
You know, it's tricky. There's been a couple of times where I've thought, you know, this might be the time that he might end up behind bars. But I don't know. It does seem like there's the possibility, you know, definitely Judge Chutkan is definitely a little bit more, she doesn't seem lenient at all. So it does make me wonder, is there going to be more repercussions for former President Trump? Who knows? But yeah, it's a good question. I don't know. I don't think so, though. What do you think?
No, I don't think he's never gonna. I don't think that man's ever gonna see any jail. Honestly, no matter how much they have on him, how much dirt. Yeah. Once an elite, always an elite. That's my opinion. Yeah. And no shade on any elites anywhere in the audience, but I just think that man, President Trump, same if it were Joe Biden up on that stage, or if it were Hillary Clinton, if it were any presidential candidate, it's not going to happen. I don't think so. I think he will pay them off. I personally believe that President Donald Trump will not see any jail time. And I think we had some fantastic banter points today. And with that, that's all we have time for today. Have a good week, everyone.
And stay tuned for more news, views, and info.
And we'll see you next time on The Report.